Well, for the sake of saving time, I think we do have a quorum, correct, Jared? And we'll get things underway for this month's CAC meeting. So I guess the first thing we need to look at doing today is the agenda approval, since we have a quorum. And we have a second on that.
Miley Foster, I'll second.
Can't work the stupid thing. You don't.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. And before we move any further, we've got Tony online, I believe. If you would like to make a comment or anything today, since this is your last meeting, we'll give you an opportunity to do that. It's with you.
Thank you, Ed. Again, it's my last meeting for CAC. I had last year I had changed job and extensive traveling. I feel like I have not able to contribute enough to the group, but all the learning, all the information sharing. So I thank everybody, and please volunteer if you can, if you are not traveling, if you are not full-time working in an extensive, crazy environment. This is a great group to be with, and it was great working with you as well, Ed. Back to you.
Okay, it's a pleasure serving with you, and we appreciate everything you did. Okay, has everybody had an opportunity to look at the minutes? If so, we'll take a motion to approve those if there's no objections.
Welling Clark, El Paso County, motion to approve minutes as submitted.
Second on that.
Chuck Theobald, Colorado Springs, second.
Okay, any additional discussion, comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, there are no opposed. Okay.
Carrie Storm, abstain. I was absent.
Okay. You got that, Jared? Okay. Okay, let me look at the screen here for a second. Okay, moving on here. Do we have anybody that has public comment that you know of online, Jared?
Mr. Chair, we did not receive anybody who had requested to make public comment, but I'll ask anyone who's online who is not already a member of the committee to please use the raise hand function if they would like to provide public comment. And if anyone's in the room who would like to provide public comment, again, I don't see anyone in the room outside of staff and committee members, and I don't see any hands raised, so I think we can proceed at your discretion.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving along here, action items. Jason, we'll have you up for this one. And I believe on this action item, if in discussion with Danelle, that's going to be more of a discussion topic than a voting topic. So feedback on this one's kind of vital.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks very much, and good afternoon. Yeah, we're just going to get your feedback and comments on a few things today. No big decisions. Just want to hear from you. Going to be talking about the active transportation plan, which is all things walking, biking, and micromobility, which is things like e-scooters. Little disclaimer: this is a regional plan, so it does not replace local planning processes. So we really trying to focus on things that are best done at the regional level. Biggest one is probably coordination across jurisdictional boundaries, things like that. We've been working since late last year. We've been to the CAC once previously to get some initial feedback early on in the process. We're expecting to come back one more time before seeking your formal recommendation for approval. So this is number 2 out of 3 check-ins that we're planning on doing with you on this project. What we've completed so far is a stakeholder process, a survey, existing conditions report, and done some goal settings. And the main things, just for context again, that we'd like to get out of the project are a complete and accurate list of projects related to bicycle and pedestrian in the region, and then to designate a set of regional priority corridors, among other things. And the reason, just to get into that a little bit before I turn it over to our consultants, the reason we want to do a designate a set of regional priority corridors is because what we've been told from some of our federal and state partners is that the more clearly we can communicate what our priorities are as a region and the better the thought process behind it, the better we'll tend to do in our state and federal and other funding prioritization processes. So, and we'd like to go even a little bit further than our regional set of priority corridors and maybe come up with just 1 to 2 top regional priority bike pedestrian corridors if we can, because the more we can do in that direction, the better those projects will do. So if you've got 2 regions competing for the same pot of money and one can say clearly these are our top priorities, this is our good thought process that we had behind it, and the other region is just kind of slapping down their favorite project of the month, you know, that first region is going to run away with all the money. So we want that to be us. I think that's all I've got. And with that, I'll turn it over to our Olson consulting team. They've been leading the project, doing a great job. And thanks in advance for your questions and comments.
Hello, apologize. I was a little late on jumping in. So I'm a little, I don't know exactly how you started it, Jason. But yeah, appreciate everybody's time. Did you, were you able to articulate that we are not looking for action on this?
Yeah,
okay,
that's right.
Okay. All right, so let me get my screen shared. Oh, it's way over there. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing a presentation now. Okay. All right, so getting into it. So really the updates I wanted to provide everybody is just kind of a look at the public input that we had received. And then we'll kind of dive into a little bit of the TAC workshop that Jason kind of alluded to. And then a brief look at the draft corridors, which hopefully everybody got the power or the PDF ahead of this in the packet. And so, you know, one of the things is to kind of highlight that draft corridors is definitely in flux and would love to receive input from you all on it as well. Okay, so from public input, we received a little over 400 responses as of mid last month, which was kind of our cutoff timeline so that we could start getting some of the, you know, just get it input into our methodology and thought process on what we want to prioritize inside of this plan. We did that a forms survey. We did the map input, and then we also had an additional area agency on aging survey that went out to that population. As you can see, this map kind of shows the spread of that public survey. We did have a bit of a higher concentration of responses kind of in the center of the MPO, but we did receive a good number of responses from various zip codes around the MPO. Getting into some of the responses, so 92% of the responses did say that they drove at least weekly. So just to kind of highlight in the background that, you know, the survey definitely did not seem to be overly, you know, bike ped focused or advocates. It seemed like there was a good spread of responses. There was 20% of the respondents said that they walked less than monthly, and 45% of responses said they biked less than monthly. So, you know, one of the goals of the plan is to make walking and biking more prevalent, more common, and more kind of accessible by people across the region. So, just as a reminder of kind of why we're doing the study, inattentive drivers was the highest safety kind of results. So people said inattentive drivers, lack of or discontinuous sidewalks, and then the speed of vehicles along the routes were the top three safety concerns from that survey results. And kind of interestingly, crime was reported as the least reported as a safety concern that people have experienced on the trails and on the sidewalks. So again, I thought that was a very interesting kind of point, as a lot of the conversations we've had, both anecdotally and from stakeholders, was that crime was a main concern. So I thought that was quite interesting, actually. And then medical facilities, government buildings, and entertainment venues were stated as the most inaccessible by walking and biking or rolling. And then parks and schools were the least unable to get to in that result. So, which makes sense when you sit back and think about it, because we do focus a lot on getting people to parks, getting people to schools. Safe routes to school does have a big focus kind of across the nation. So for people to recognize that medical facilities are more difficult to access, that does make kind of sense on the general basis. On the right hand side here is a little distribution chart of the question was, what is the typical destination and your distance for walking or using a personal mobility device? So on this chart, red means that people don't walk or wheelchair to that location, and blue, the dark blue, means that they are willing to walk or commonly walk 10 plus blocks to that location. So again, kind of makes a lot of sense on the face value that recreation, people are willing to walk or wheelchair to a spot of recreation, and kind of overwhelmingly a long distance. I thought that, in contrast to where people believe it's difficult to get to, the entertainment venue, people were willing to walk, pretty commonly over 6 blocks to get to those places. So it's a nice little aha, at least in my mind, of people say that they're unable to get to it, but they're willing to walk to those events and the venues. And then the next kind of highest willing to walk to was shopping, where many people, right there in the center in the gray, many people are willing to walk 2 to 5 blocks, and then a good chunk of people are still willing to walk a little bit more for shopping. So I thought that was a very interesting set of results from the survey.
Hey, Kyle, could I ask you a question?
Absolutely, yeah.
I see where you've got the walk and bike. Do people do that? I don't know if this chart shows that actually, but do they walk or bike to transit to go on further trips or whatever they're doing? Is that accounted for on this in any way? Because I'm thinking a lot of people have to walk to get to the transit or something of that nature.
Yeah, it's a great question. So there are a few of those in the other people were able to put in. Yeah. And there were a few of those. How exactly people, interacted with that's kind of on their own discretion. Do you consider walking 3 or 4 blocks to the transit stop to then go shopping? Do you consider that a shopping walk? It's kind of at the person's discretion filling out the survey. But I think that's a great point. It's a common saying that every transit rider is a pedestrian. So yeah, great. And then this next slide is a lot. I mean, basically, I have a copy and paste of the two those two main points here. But this chart on the right is inverted for destination and distance for bicycling. So it matches fairly consistently with what people's willingness is on foot. Now the distances are significantly different. So the dark blue in this instance is people are willing or commonly do go 5+ miles. And so just the distance in general is a little bit different. But Again, recreation looks like everybody or many of the respondents are willing to go over 2 miles to get to a recreation facility. Job location crept up in for biking. A lot of people are willing to go over 2 miles. But then as you see, a lot more red. So the dark red is not willing to. So there is, if I flip back and forth, there is a little bit more of that dark red, people either not willing to or just don't commonly bike to any of these facilities. And I think that's most of what I have on the actual survey. There's lots more to dig into, and many of these points will be kind of interwoven throughout the report. So as we make suggestions or just comments about what types of facilities, actually that's one area of the survey that I don't have up here. But what are people's willingness to or comfortability walking along the shoulder of a roadway versus a sidewalk that's attached versus a trail. So we will have some of that data inside of the report, and if anybody's interested, I can pull up the raw data too, and we can look through it. But so that type of data will go into what we would recommend as local municipalities look at if you're going to do investments into the pedestrian infrastructure. Here's a nice kind of backboard of people prefer this according to this survey. So that's one of the ways we're going to utilize these responses. Okay, so moving into the mapped responses. Full disclosure, I'm still working my way through these. So we have over 800 responses, and many of them have typed out comments about why they have a comment about this location. So I'm still kind of trying to get my head wrapped around how I bring that person's voice, and why they said this is a weakness or why they said this specific intersection is a strength. We're still working on getting that pulled forward, and making it so that it's a really, obviously it's a valuable part of the input that people, put the time forward to make a comment specifically to this, intersection or whatever. But so I don't have a really digestible way to show that yet. But kind of overall, I've got the values here. So there were 62 strength dots put on the map. 13 of them were pedestrian, 40 of them were bicyclists. So, that ranges from this is a nice trail to I wish we did more of this intersection improvement. So that's kind of the range of those kind of comments. Weaknesses, we all know everybody likes to poke holes. So there's a lot more of the weaknesses identified. There's 512 of them. 169 of them were pedestrian weaknesses. And that ranges from we need to have a stop sign at this intersection to this set of sidewalk is broken. So there's a big variability in why people said something's a weakness. And then likewise, the bike weaknesses range from this should have a bike priority, or this is unsafe when not maintained, kind of across the board. It's very very different in what people had put in as their comments. And then lastly, we had we allowed people to put in opportunities, and we didn't prompt that or anything, so people could distinguish if something is an opportunity or a strength, kind of, or a weakness on their own. Is really up to the respondents to determine which of the three categories they're putting it in. But 39 pedestrian opportunities and 128 bike opportunities. Those range from, again, put a mid-block crossing here to this location needs grade separated to this school or this particular business is very willing and wanting to have infrastructure. So again, wide variety of what exactly people put in the comments, and we're really still trying to work through how do we make that kind of data really digestible for the report and very impactful in the recommendations when it comes down to the specific points. So, any questions on this part?
Yes, sir. Welling Clark, El Paso County. I'm looking at the numbers of strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities. Were people limited to one of each, or could one person submit multiples of those?
Yep, did not limit specific people. We did keep track of when it was inputted, when the data was input. So, if somebody was just going and putting a weakness, no comments, weakness, no comments, we know, if somebody was just kind of littering the map, so to speak. But we did not tell people that they could only do one or choose or anything like that.
Okay, I was just curious where you had every pedestrian bike and uncategorized in the strength, weakness, and opportunities. How many individuals put those in? Like under strengths and 13 pedestrian, there was actually 9 unique people putting things in, or just one person. That would be a little bit of information.
Yep, I can try to dig into that, but we didn't ask people to sign in or anything, so it is rather anonymous.
You can't do that. Don't waste your time on it then.
Yeah, but
thank you.
Yeah, so this is it. This breakdown, it just means when somebody put that weakness down, did they say this is specifically a pedestrian weakness, or did they just put a dot in saying this is a general weakness, and that would be an uncategorized weakness? Yeah, thanks for your question.
Chuck Theobald from Colorado Springs. In looking at the way the map is populated, there are about 300 strengths and opportunities and about 500 weaknesses. I'd expect to see a flood of red, and the red would overwhelm the blue and the green. And is that just because of the way they're stacked up?
Yep, it's just because of the way that you draw this on top. In the report and in the kind of breakdown of public survey, we'll have different maps. We'll probably have one map dedicated to strengths, one map dedicated to weaknesses, and we may break it down even further.
Especially in the Colorado Springs zone, breaking it down by zip code maps or something like that, so you can really distinguish where things are, might be helpful. I know the membership here is divided up by community as well. It might be interesting for both the PPACG and the CAC to see, like, these are concerns in Colorado Springs, these are concerns in Manitou, that kind of thing.
Yep, they will definitely be more. You'll be able to distinguish now, and I have some of it on my computer. I can pull it up and kind of go into GIS with you all if you'd like. But it's just because of the size of the icon, and it was kind of just I don't have the end kind of analysis, so I don't really want to show all of like the sausage making, right? Honestly, so yeah,
that's very reasonable. Better to put it in the report so that we can pour over it than to take time to look at it here.
Yeah, you give 3 minutes to review it. Yep, 100%. Okay, where am I at here? Okay, yeah, if there's any other questions or even kind of anything that people would like to see, so I appreciate that, having wanting to break it down by at least showing the municipal boundaries so that people can see kind of where. Yep, good. Okay, and then the third I guess, survey typology here is the Area Agency on Aging. So this survey, this survey is one that we put inside of the membership. I guess I can't remember if it was a newsletter or just a yearly survey that they do on their own. So we kind of took advantage of that, and sorry, I'm getting distracted. Took advantage of that, and we got roughly 250 responses. So that was, it was good. That there was some disappointment that there wasn't a higher percentage, because I think they sent it out to like 3,000 or 4,000 members. But you know, it was still nice, an additional 250 responses from a different demographic than what would have responded to the online survey. About half of those respondents, so this is what the survey looked like here on the right. About half of those respondents identified themselves as mobility limited. So that was everything from I use a cane to a wheelchair to I'm blind, and everything in between. And then after that, a third of those respondents said that safety concerns were their biggest challenge to getting around. So, and that third includes some of those half. So, some people had suggested, you know, they're mobility limited because they're blind, but then also that they felt unsafe to walk around. And so this question here, what is your biggest challenge for using active modes? That's where those two kind of overlapped. Another key takeaway is in the box there, people were able to select if a type of infrastructure was not important or more important. And interestingly, pedestrian lighting was ranked the highest importance for those respondents. So on average, it got just over a 4. And I think there was something like 120 of the 250 respondents gave it a 5, and many others gave it a 4. So pedestrian lighting ranked the highest of those options, followed by crosswalk striping and visibility. I don't, off the top of my head, remember what the lowest kind of least important infrastructure was, but we'll have some of that information in the report as well, so that, again, as local municipalities are making a decision of what type of infrastructure they want to fund, they'll have this report to look back on and say, okay, people in general wanted this instead of that. And then the last big takeaway here is that the grocery store was identified as the most often traveled to when not using an automobile. That has a little bit of a caveat that a couple of the staff kind of reviewing the survey results believed that that might have been skewed, because again, that can be everything from walking to taking public transit to anything else. So there was some caution suggested when looking at grocery store being the main destination. However, grocery store was close. It was followed by I only travel by personal automobile as another top response. So yeah, take that for what it is. Okay, and this is what just confused me, because I think I lost a slide in the shuffle. However, this was my transition to talk about the TAC workshop and how that went. It was a hybrid event where we had I think it was roughly 8 or 10 people online, and then we had 4 or 5 people in person. the key questions. This again, I don't know why this one slide made it through in my PowerPoint here, but the key questions we asked are, when looking at characteristics for a trail to be called a regional priority, what are important? Is it safety? Is it the type of facility? Is it the number of households or the number of jobs that it would serve? Is it the ability to go to key destinations in the region? Is going to Garden of the Gods, is that more important, or is that just as important as serving this commercial corridor? So those are the questions that we were asking in that workshop, and got some good feedback. Another set of questions was, knowing that all the local plans kind of take precedent, they're the ones that are going to make the distinction on what to fund. Can this plan suggest additional projects, right? So say the city of Colorado Springs has a trail coming to here, and the city of Monument has a trail coming to here. Can this plan suggest some connection that hasn't previously been suggested? And we got pretty overwhelming approval to make that connection if it makes sense for the region. But just to highlight that this is just a suggested thing. We're not, PPACG isn't putting this project forward. It's just highlighting that there is a gap that could or should be filled to make this regional corridor. And then the last set of questions were, once we've identified all the corridors, how do we start to prioritize? How do we, as Jason mentioned, CDOT and some other jurisdictions want to know, what's PPACG's number one corridor? What's the most important thing for them to fund? And how do we start to make that out of the corridors that we're suggesting? Is it because it's the most easily implementable? Is it because it already has money? Is it because it doesn't have money? So we were asking all those kind of questions, just trying to understand how to digest the end results. And then I'm going to go ahead here. I guess any questions before I move on that pertain to the TAC workshop and maybe some of the activities that we did?
Don't see any.
Okay. I'm gonna take 2 seconds and I'm gonna do my copy paste here. I've got, actually, I'll just share this for now. So can everybody see my PDF here of the draft corridor? And then everybody did say that they got this ahead of time. I want to kind of just take a second and get your reaction to it, see what your thoughts were and what you liked or didn't like about it. And I just want to take some notes and kind of open the floor back over to you of, just again, maybe many of you were not involved in the TAC workshop. What's your initial thoughts on the blue lines that connect the region?
So it was interesting to me. We live in Manitou, and my husband and I were trying to figure out how we could ride our bikes up to Cascade for lunch. And it was going to be a 12-hour round trip up Rampart Range Road into Woodland Park, down through Woodland Park, around down to the Wines of Colorado, back up through Woodland Park, back down through Rampart Range Road. And so this little blue line would make it so much easier for us. I mean, other than riding on the shoulder of the 24. So we are so supportive of that little blue line because we could be at the Wines of Colorado sitting on the deck having a lovely lunch in an hour from Manitou. And I mean, that's what this is all about.
That would have been needed to be a pretty good lunch if you're going to take a 12-hour bike ride to
Yeah,
go
yeah.
eat.
It just didn't pencil out because that
Yeah.
Rampart Range Road. I mean, that's a grind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone
Now,
else
do you have
on it?
do you have a different view of this map? Maybe something with labels or a legend that we could
Not
use?
currently. No. Yeah. That's one of the things in production is a really like a for public view. That way, people who aren't used to looking at maps and things can understand it. But yeah, I don't currently have one with labels. There's some labels on the underneath, but yeah, there is definitely one coming with Highway 24 labeled and different chunks of useful information.
Yeah, that's okay. Could you talk us through real quick what the different colors mean?
Yeah, sure. So overall, the three main things to consider in reviewing this map was, so there's this red with yellow background lighting, and actually you can see the yellow back behind many of these other routes. That is indicating that it was previously suggested in the last regional non-motorized plan. And so many of those kind of just have continued to be important and have made their way forward into this draft. And then this just simple blue is a suggested regional corridor that very often or almost always follows an existing project or trail or planned network from the local plan. And then there's these little stretches here. Let's see if I can, of these orange dashed lines. And that's either a place that it deviates from any given plan or a connection that is suggested, based on some feedback we received. So here's another example of, the corridors, maybe it comes over here to follow the local plan. However, this plan says this nice little connection here would make it easier and would enhance the corridor. So those are the three kind of legend pieces. And like I mentioned, I definitely want your feedback, particularly as members of Manitou or Monument, just to digest what that local plan says and what a regional priority from that plan would look like. I have, there's been iterations on this map even since we set it out, just because it is kind of a evolving document. Other municipalities have started to send over their desired network, and so we need to kind of digest what that looks like and what's appropriate. But yeah.
This is Gary Shirt, citizen at large. What would have been helpful to me is to know which of these trails are already in existence being used, because it was very confusing to me. A lot of this looks like the Santa Fe Trail, the Cottonwood Trail, the Sinton Trail, which are being used. And so I found it hard what you're really trying to show here. It would be nicer to know, here's what's in existence and here's where we want to expand and make things different.
Okay. Yeah, noted. Yep. Existing versus proposed, budgeted versus unbudgeted, definitely are variations of not only the map that we want to kind of provide, but like as I mentioned earlier, those are kind of prioritization technique, tools that if something is built, right, the Santa Fe Trail, let's use that as the example. Chunks of the Santa Fe are done and people are using it every day. is the fact that there's chunks of that done, and then small chunks that aren't done and aren't budgeted. Does that make those small unbudgeted projects more important for the region because we want to make that continuous trail? Or so that's kind of why it is a little ambiguous currently. And I apologize for that's a cause of it being a hard map to digest. I can completely understand that.
Sorry to interrupt, Kyle. Is that something we're expecting to have fairly soon? Those other maps? Is it something that maybe the CAC would want mailed out to them in a week or two? Seeing some nods. Okay, can we plan on that?
As a hint forward, yes, those maps are actively being created as a part of the draft plan. So, yep, we can definitely get a next iteration of the map sent out. Yeah. Not wanting to eat all of the time, I'm going to move on to next steps, essentially. And really the next steps are that draft plan. So over the next about week, we are looking to produce the draft plan. It'll have most of the material in it. We don't anticipate having maybe the implementation fully fleshed out. We don't necessarily anticipate all the pieces to line up, and that's why it's a draft, not meant for, it's not the public review draft. So that public review draft will come after you all have a little bit of time, the TAC has a little bit of time, and then the municipalities themselves have a little bit of time to review and provide comments. We'll push that back out for public review and start that 30-day public review, and then come back to the CAC, the TAC, and the board after in the August-September timeframe for approval and the other processes. So I guess the thing that is not on this is we are reaching out to a few stakeholders still. So a couple of the smaller municipalities, we want to have another sit down and just really make sure that the draft corridors suit their needs and identify corridors that they think are going to be overall good for their community. So that is something we're actively trying to schedule.
Is that all you have, Kyle?
It's all from me.
Okay. You have anything else, Jason?
I don't think so. Just
Miley has a question.
I have a question that's more for a Jason question, maybe. I was looking at the bike map and thinking, okay, I'd like to be able to say, kind of score. I'm an analytical person and say, okay, even though, as what Kyle was saying, maybe it's just a little connector. Is that more important than some whole new thing or whatever? So if I had some criteria, then I would look at all of the trails that are in question and say, okay, this is a ABCD or whatever, where depending on where it is, maybe that little connector is more important because of for safety reasons or something, where in another spot, the connector wouldn't be as important. And so that'll take input from people who are using those trails to say that. And so I was trying to understand, are these responses we got, are they these people that have been using the trails, or do we need input from a different group to answer this trails question? Because I was feeling like I ride it and walk on a lot of trails, but I was thinking I need this map and go check them all out. So in other words, I needed time to give my input. I couldn't really answer today, but also it'd be helpful to have some criteria that we could use that would be useful for making the decisions rather than our just random thoughts.
That makes a lot of sense. And I have a feeling Kyle will have something to say about this too, but that is something we really wouldn't mind hearing from you all today or in the future about what those criteria might be. It's a question we asked the TAC as well, and again in their workshop, and we got a few ideas from them, but we haven't gotten a ton of feedback about what the prioritization should be, what the criteria should be, and we as staff and the consulting team don't want to be making too many of these decisions ourselves on behalf of everybody. So we've been asking. So if you today or over the next couple of weeks, we'd like to hear from you. And we're also going to continue asking other stakeholders and members of the public, but would love your thoughts on it too.
Well, I think what would be helpful is if we had a map that more clearly defined what it is we're looking at. Is this a built trail? Is it a proposed trail? Is it what it is? So, because I realized some of the trails I saw on the map weren't really there. And so I was confused about that. So if we had a good map that clearly showed us what the features of each of these lines are.
Yeah, I think a little more definition.
Yep. Yeah, I can definitely get that turned around. One of the things I wanted to mention is, as we mentioned, as Jason mentioned, that, the purpose of this plan is not to tell the municipalities what to build, but rather to help identify why certain projects that they've already identified are important for the region, kind of helping bring validity to the planning and efforts that have already been taken in the local setting. So one of the things that will be included in the report is kind of a breakdown of the corridors. So say there's this chunk of a corridor. What we'll do is on a page, we'll say that there's this many people who live within a quarter mile. There's these destinations specifically that are along this corridor. There's these things that make this corridor kind of regionally useful and a priority, as well as identifying which chunks are and are not built, so that the municipalities can then take it and say, okay, well, looking at this, we knew that obviously this project was important because we made it into our local plan, but maybe a little bit of a fresher look, since some of the plans are 5+ years old, they can use that as some bearing for maybe they want to put it into their CIP, or maybe they want to find ways to fund it in kind of unconventional or unstandard methods. So we definitely need that kind of data and backing for these projects for the local municipalities.
I guess what I was looking for is, so how am I going to communicate this to you? Am I going to do a checklist? Am I going to do a big long email? What's my next step here? I'm going to have a map and say this blue line needs to be built or not, because or what?
I would take all forms. If you have a specific type of interaction you'd like, we can try to accommodate that. A printed off map with a big red X on corridors you don't like, and a new blue circle that is a better route for you. We would take that as well. So I don't know, Jason, do you have any kind of preferred method of interaction or anything?
One idea, possibly we're going to be sending out some of these maps that you're describing within a couple weeks. Maybe we can have unique labels or numbers or something on each of the corridors. So you can say corridor number 2 or 15 or whatever, and then the comment following that. Would that work for everybody? Mm-hmm. Looks like it would. Okay, we do that.
Just call it the trail names.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, just have good identification on the lines on your map so that we could then speak specifically to them. But I think you'll get some input.
I think it's beneficial sending us all the same thing, so that you're not getting random comments that you have to decipher later, if you have it consistent. Welling.
Okay. Welling Clark, El Paso County. Really a question and a comment. the comment is this map I'm looking at right now looks like it's geared towards a cyclist because the size, the previous bar chart slides we saw where there's one was walking and then one was cycling. It might be beneficial to have two maps, one for walking and one for cycling, to break it apart just because of this spatial distances. One of the things I'm curious in municipalities is in some municipalities, with the advent of e-scooters and e-bikes, some trails say pedestrian and bicycle only, no motorized. So that currently the way it's written would exclude the little e-scooters and also e-bikes per se. I don't know if you have that on the radar screen to talk to municipalities to look at. That might be a benefit, maybe not. I'm not sure, but it's something that has evolved in the years. Second thing is, with regards to walking, over on the west side, Highway 24 was put in, and that separated two major sections of the neighborhoods, and has this study looking at where overpasses to bridge major transportation corridors that allows mobility from the standpoint of walking, I'll say that for the better term, skateboarding, bicycling, or something like that, so they don't have to cross busy corridors. You can go underneath the intersections, but some of the highways, Highway 24 West and Highway 24 East, they have crosswalks, and let's just say sometimes people don't slow down for someone in a crosswalk. It's just a concern of has that been looked at or broached with the municipalities as well? To add, it's more activity where transportation lines have broken connectivity between neighborhoods and like grocery stores. How do I get there? Things of that nature.
Yeah, so I really appreciate the questions. So I'll start back with the e-bikes and e-scooters. We have talked about it. As I'm sure you all know, it's very complicated because of some trails were built using this money, and this money doesn't allow motorized vehicles, and by state statute or by local code, this is an e-bike that goes over X miles an hour is, no matter what, barred from this facility because of how it was built. So some of that's very difficult to approach at a regional level. They have some language about kind of uniformity across the region, but I don't want to get your hopes up in telling you that it will solve some of those signage and use concerns or issues. And then as far as like the overpasses, I know it's we want to be very careful in to not tell municipalities that they've got some money to spend, because it's just unfair for PPACG to say, hey, you need to go build an overpass because it's better for the region. So we have to be pretty careful with suggesting things that aren't already suggested, particularly very expensive endeavors like that. But we're hoping that in those kind of breakdowns of each corridor, we can identify some key concerns or some major roadblocks or some just big lifts that need to happen to make it a regional, well-oiled kind of network.
No, thank you for saying that. I wasn't saying PPACG says this or to do this. It's just that if this plan bringing that forward to the forefront of the different municipalities so they can look at that themselves, because they have to make that determination within their jurisdictions. And so that's where I was going with that. If you're identifying things to help them plan better. Thank you.
And then maybe if we don't want to propose a specific project, because we're staying away from that, maybe that's one of our dotted lines that we're aware if there's a need or a desire for a connection in a location, we could do that. And if you're aware of a sort of a ballpark location, if there's a representative or a community sentiment about where some folks might want to see a connection of some kind made, let us know.
Will do, sir.
Thanks.
from my perspective, anecdotally, I would say a large percentage of the people using these trails are using them simply for recreation or exercise. They're not going to work. They're not going to shop. And I think one of the things that's important is to ensure that you have enough parking at trailheads at appropriate places so people can get on the trail. I go to the Woodman Park and Ride a lot and use that because that's kind of a central location and that's got plenty of parking. But when you go up the Cottonwood Trail, there aren't a lot of places to park there. So I think that's another part, the parking, that needs to be considered as you go through this. And Welling, to your point, most of these trails are multimodal. So they're designed for people to walk, ride, do all those things on one trail. There are some mountain bike trails that are single track, but I don't think those are even included in any of this. So, thank you.
Wouldn't walk that far.
Hey, anyone else? Oh, Tyler.
Yeah, Tyler, People Citizen at Large. Do we get any feedback from the police department or the fire department about any additional maybe fire risks or any additional risk of litter or things where they didn't exist before by adding additional pedestrian traffic?
I don't think we got anything specifically, but there was a comment made at our board meeting, at least, that especially where there's an easement or a crossing of private property or something like that, that respect for those kinds of things is something we want to look at. But I don't think we got anything about that specifically. I guess we could look into that. The only thing we have from sort of that safety perspective is we've got excellent crash data, but maybe we could look into those issues as well.
Okay, and then kind of on the same lines, have you gotten any feedback where people are pushing back and saying, I don't want any additional pedestrian traffic in my neighborhood or anything like that?
So the back to the police and fire, we did attend the Drive Safe Colorado where they have representation from local police, and we did have interaction and just some general overall knowledge about their desire to be careful on speed zones, school zones and things, and the kind of just the interaction there. And then to the question of, do we have any pushback from people who don't want infrastructure? We've heard a couple of things of people that feel that they don't think that there's a need. I would say that voice has been fairly well, and that most people are in favor of additional sidewalks and trails, for whether it's for recreation or for access or other general uses. Overwhelming people say that they'd like it, but just trying to hone in on what they would like and how we can make this plan useful to them.
And we've heard from a few folks that not everybody's thrilled with bike lanes and road diets in particular.
Yep.
But haven't really gotten any. Everybody seems to love trails, so that's we're focusing most on that. And I don't think we're going to make any comments about specific locations where some of those other things are concerns. But obviously, it's a comment that we've gotten, so it'll be reflected in our plan that some of these things like multi-use trails seem to be more or less universally liked, and some of these others tend to, there's mixed feelings about them.
Okay, anyone else questions? Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen, and probably about 2 weeks we'll have something to respond back to you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Count on that. Thank you, and thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you for and thank you, Kyle.
Absolutely.
Okay, waiting on the catch up here. Okay, renovation update. Are you handling that, Danelle, or is Jared?
No, I can handle it, and Jared can jump in if I get anything wrong. But so it's not bad in here today, but you might have noticed at some of our past meetings that it tends to get a little warm in the building. We've been having some issues with our HVAC system, specifically our air handling system for several months now. And we are going to be renovating that, which is going to be quite quite extensive. We're actually going to be shutting down the building for the most part for at least 8 weeks, potentially 12 weeks. Their plan is basically to do the bottom half of the building for 8 weeks, and then do the top part of the building. But essentially what this means for CAC is that we would like to recommend as staff that we hold the next at least 2, if not 3, CAC meetings virtually. We just have so many meetings and committees that we are trying to shuffle, that unless something big comes up that we really need to get together and discuss in person, it looks like right now that the summer activities or the summer agendas are pretty light. So we're hoping that CAC is willing to do those virtually, and just be aware that if you do need to come into PPACG for some other reason, chances are nobody will be here. So please reach out to whoever that is in advance and arrange for a better way to meet. Any questions you might have, or if you do have any issues, of course, we're still available by phone, by email, by Teams or Zoom. But essentially, most of the staff will be working virtually for the majority of the summer into the fall.
Welling Clark, Danielle, question. How well has this building been inspected? Were there possible surprises like asbestos and things like that?
So we have been assured that asbestos has previously been taken care of, that this particular project won't interact with any asbestos. Of course, you can't promise things if you're getting into ceilings and walls and things.
The reason I bring that up is owning old houses. If I double the cost and double the time, I'm usually pretty close on target. So I think 2 months definitely agreed, and probably we should expect possibly more if something unexpected comes up.
Yes, we will definitely be keeping everybody up to date. So if something does happen, we do have locations already mapped out for the board meetings for PPRTA and PPACG board meetings for the next 2 months. And we'll just be working on we're working it as best we can.
Good luck. Any other questions? This should be exciting for you. Okay. Let's see, Chris is online. Do you have any comments today? Okay. Anyone else from your respective cities or jurisdictions? Why we're quiet today. Is Maddie online by any chance?
She was earlier.
I am.
Well, do you have anything you'd like to say or share? Or?
Other than I apologize for not being on camera, but I've got 2 little babies that are starting to wake up, so I'm tending to them at the same time.
Yeah, congratulations on the twins. I think we were all kind of surprised.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you for participating today.
No, thank you. It was a great discussion. Really looking forward to some of those adjusted maps as well. And thank you all for your flexibility as well. I'll try and send pictures here soon.
Okay. Yeah, Danelle can get those out to everybody.
All right.
Okay, anyone else? I guess we are adjourned then.
You're gonna be virtually there, huh?